Jake Martinez stood on the transport ship's observation deck, watching Kepler-7's station expand in the viewport. The colossal structure, its metallic surfaces gleaming under the light of 3 distant suns, rotated slowly in space. This would be his home for the next 2 years, a part of Earth's inaugural student exchange program with the Galactic Academy. The 19-year-old human pressed closer to the glass, eager to absorb more details of the station. Other passengers, mostly returning students from various alien species, observed him with a mixture of curiosity and amusement at his evident excitement. Jake, undeterred, considered this the adventure of a lifetime. "First time off Earth?" a voice asked from behind him. Turning, he saw a tall, blue-skinned being with 4 arms approaching. Kind eyes and a friendly smile graced the alien's face, despite the stark physical differences. "Yes," Jake replied, extending his hand in a human greeting. "I'm Jake Martinez from Earth." The alien, Zay of Alta Prime, gazed at the outstretched hand a moment before grasping it with one of his 4 hands. "I believe we are assigned as roommates for the term." Jake beamed. "Really? That's great. I was a little worried about sharing a room with someone who might not like humans." Zay tilted his head, a gesture apparently universal among many species. "Why would anyone dislike humans? Your species is new to galactic society, but this makes you interesting, not unpleasant." As their transport docked with the station, Jake gathered his belongings. A single travel case containing everything he owned. This, compared to the multiple containers other students carried, seemed peculiar. Z offered to help carry his meager possessions, but Jake politely declined. The docking bay dwarfed Jake's imagination, its vastness capable of housing several city blocks. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved through the area. Some walked on legs like Jake and Z, others floated, and a few seemed to roll or slide across the floor. The air, though clean, carried unfamiliar scents that Jake's nose couldn't identify. The station housed approximately 50,000 students and faculty, Z explained as they walked toward the main corridors. Students came from over 200 different worlds across 47 star systems. Jake tried to absorb everything at once. Crystalline beings resembling walking gemstones conversed in musical tones near an information kiosk. A group of insect-like creatures with gossamer wings hovered near the ceiling, their chittering voices echoing off the metal walls. In one corner, aquatic beings navigated a transparent river-like tube that ran along the wall. "How do they all breathe the same air?" Jake inquired, genuinely curious. "The station maintains multiple atmospheric zones," Zay replied. "The main corridors use a standard mix suitable for most species. Those needing different environments have specialized areas or wear breathing apparatus." Their dormitory was in Section C, designated for humanoid species with similar environmental requirements. The hallways seemed more familiar to Jake, featuring normal doorways and ceiling heights. Their room was simple yet comfortable, with 2 sleeping areas, a shared study space, and a small food preparation unit. Z's side was already adorned with items from his homeworld, including what appeared to be family pictures of groups of blue-skinned, 4-armed beings in various poses. "You may choose whichever sleeping area you prefer," Zay offered. "I have no preference." Jake chose the window seat, enjoying the view of the station's central hub. From there, he could see beings moving through transparent tubes, connecting different sections. A sight akin to an enormous ant farm, except these ants were intelligent beings from across the galaxy. "What should I expect from classes here?" Jake asked, as he unpacked his belongings. Z, seated cross-legged, watched him intently. "The curriculum is quite advanced. Most students arrive already knowing basic interstellar physics, quantum mechanics, and multi-species sociology. What is your educational background on Earth?" A sinking feeling filled Jake. "I graduated high school with good grades and have begun university studies in engineering, but I doubt we cover the same topics. Earth is still developing its understanding of advanced sciences," Z said gently. This is normal for younger species. The Academy has preparatory courses to help students from less technologically advanced worlds. Though Z's words weren't insulting, they still stung. Jake had always considered himself intelligent, yet here he was seemingly behind most other students. Don't worry, Z reassured him, sensing his discomfort. Intelligence and knowledge are different things. Your species must have something special to be invited into the exchange program so early in your galactic membership. A chime echoed through their room, followed by a voice in what Jake assumed was the station's standard language. Z translated. New student orientation begins in 1 hour. We should head to the main auditorium soon. As they prepared to leave, Jake caught a glimpse of himself reflected in the food preparation unit. His ordinary brown hair, brown eyes and average height seemed remarkably unremarkable compared to Zay's exotic appearance. Zay, he said, as they walked to the auditorium, what do most species think about humans? What's our reputation out here? Zay considered the question thoughtfully. Humans are considered curious, he finally said. Your species achieved spaceflight quickly after discovering fire. Most species take far longer to develop technology, but you also come from what galactic surveys classify as a death world, a planet with unusually dangerous conditions, high gravity, aggressive weather patterns, large predators, frequent natural disasters. Most intelligent life develops on much gentler worlds. Earth's environment would kill most species within days. Jake had never considered Earth that dangerous. Hurricanes and earthquakes were just normal aspects of life. The idea that his home planet was classified as a death trap by galactic standards was both disturbing and oddly flattering. The auditorium was packed, filled with beings of every imaginable shape and size. Jake and Zay found seats in a section designated for their height range, though Jake still felt relatively small. As orientation began, Jake realized his true education was just starting. This wasn't merely about learning advanced science and technology. It was about finding his place in a cosmos far larger and more strange than he had ever imagined. Jake's first week at the Galactic Academy was profoundly humbling. In advanced physics, the professor casually discussed concepts that spun Jake's head. Students around him took notes as holographic equations projected into the air. Jake struggled to comprehend even basic principles. Today, we will review elementary quantum tunneling applications in faster-than-light communication. Professor Kreln, an insect-like being, announced, her mandibles clicking. As you learned in your preparatory education. Jake's pen hovered above his paper, hopelessly lost. The elementary concepts were far beyond anything taught on Earth. He glanced around, seeing even the youngest-looking students nodding as if this were routine review. Though they had tried to help by providing elementary textbooks, the mathematics were overwhelming. The books relied on scientific principles Earth hadn't yet uncovered. Jake felt like a Stone Age human trying to decipher a computer manual. Mr. Martinez, Professor Krelnock's voice broke through his confusion. Perhaps you could explain how quantum entanglement enables instantaneous communication across galactic distances. Heat flooded Jake's cheeks as every eye in the room turned toward him. I'm sorry, Professor. We haven't covered quantum entanglement in detail in Earth's curriculum yet. A few students made sounds that might have been polite coughs, but Jake suspected they were trying not to laugh. Professor Krelnock studied him for a moment before shifting to another student. After class, Jake walked slowly to his next course, feeling dejected. How was he supposed to compete with beings who'd been learning advanced physics since childhood? Perhaps the exchange program was a mistake. Having trouble keeping up, Jake turned to see a large reptilian being approaching him in the hallway. The creature, nearly 7 feet tall, with dark green scales covering its muscular arms and legs, and yellow eyes displaying an air of superiority, stopped before him. I'm Krath of the Saurian Imperium, the being announced, as if Jake should be impressed. I've been observing your struggles in our classes. It's amusing to see a species so far out of its depth. I'm just learning, Jake replied, trying to maintain his composure. Everyone starts somewhere. Kraft's mouth opened, revealing rows of sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. Most species start with proper, natural equipment. Claws, armor, heightened senses, brute strength. Humans possess none of these. Weak creatures, reliant on rudimentary tools due to deficient evolutionary development, they are. Other students in the hallway had paused, observing the exchange. Jake noted most appeared uneasy with Kraft's aggressive manner, yet none intervened. "We've accomplished quite a bit with our tools," Jake murmured. "We reached space and earned a place here." "Barely," Kraft scoffed. "Your species has explored space for less than a century. My people mastered interstellar travel while your ancestors still dwelled in caves. The Academy merely pities your primitive species." Anger flared in Jake's chest, but he composed himself. A fight in his first week would likely end his Academy career before it truly began. "If you'll excuse me," he said, "I need to attend my next class." Kraft bowed extravagantly. "Of course. Proceed to your remedial courses, little human." Jake's next class, Tactical Problem Solving, was taught by Commander Veltar, a stern-looking humanoid with a large cranium. Jake had dreaded this course, anticipating his Earth education would leave him perpetually behind. "Today, we will address resource allocation scenarios," announced Commander Veltar. "You will be divided into teams and presented with a crisis situation to resolve. Each team has 30 minutes to formulate a solution." Jake found himself paired with 3 other students: Nera, a crystalline being; Gemstone Torque, a small, agile creature; and Zara, a tall being with pale blue skin. Their scenario involved a mining colony that had lost contact with supply ships, facing dwindling food and water with no means of calling for help. They needed to devise a survival plan until rescue arrived. The other students swiftly proposed technologically complex solutions. Nera suggested a quantum communication array from mining equipment. Gemstone Torque envisioned a rescue beacon generated from the asteroid's mineral composition. Zara proposed modifying mining lasers into a long-range signaling device. Jake listened, but their approach troubled him. All assumed extensive colonist technical expertise. "What if we're approaching this incorrectly?" he finally questioned. The others paused, turning to him.
"What do you mean?"
asked Nera. "We're assuming the colonists need advanced tools," Jake explained. "But what if simpler methods suffice? Mining operations generate significant dust and debris. If they gathered reflective material and arranged it in patterns on the asteroid's surface, passing ships might detect it. Larger, geometrically distinct patterns would be more easily identified." Gemstone Torque's eyes widened. "That's primitive, but it would work," Jake continued. "No advanced tech required. Any colonist could gather rocks and create the patterns. It's dependable, uncomplicated, and readily accessible." Zara pondered. "The patterns would need a large size and discernible geometric shape to appear artificial." "Exactly," agreed Jake. "Multiple patterns at different locations increase the detection chance." When the time elapsed, each team presented their solutions. Other teams presented technologically driven ideas, mostly relying on equipment or knowledge unlikely to be at the colonists' disposal. When Jake's team presented their solution, dismissive murmurs rippled through the room. Their idea was too basic. Commander Veltar listened calmly, then announced, "Team 4's solution boasts the highest probability of success. In crises, simple solutions often outperform intricate ones. Sophisticated technology can falter, but fundamental physics and human ingenuity endure." Jake felt pride, but noted several students' skepticism. Kraft snickered derisively from the back. After class, Jake walked to the dormitory, conflicted. He was struggling in most courses, but his unconventional perspective provided an edge in tactical problem solving. Zeke was waiting for him. "How were your classes today?" "Disparate," Jake admitted. "I'm still falling behind, but I might have discovered a talent." "What is it?" Jake explained. Zeke nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps your species' simpler technological background is advantageous in some scenarios. Jake shared his encounter with Kraft, and Zeke's face darkened. Kraft comes from a warrior culture, Zeke explained. Their society prioritizes physical prowess and natural weapons over intellect. He likely views your success as threatening, Jake grumbled. Great. Now I have an enemy solely for excelling in class. Zeke advised, don't let him discourage you. The Academy values diverse intelligences. Your perspective could be precisely what some courses need. Returning to his studies, Jake realized the Academy experience would be far more demanding than expected. His entire species' potential future riding on his success. He delved into physics, subjects others had mastered years before. A long road lay ahead. A containment field flickered, unnoticed by others engrossed in Professor Vextar's explanation of hunting patterns, but noticeable by Jake. The brief interruptions grabbed his attention. The Shadow Stalker's advantage lay in its stillness. Professor Vextar explained. They waited motionless for hours or days. The creature stopped moving, appearing like an obsidian statue. Only its head shifted to track holographic prey. Jake scrutinized the creature, noticing that its posture suggested more than mere hunting. Its head positioning, limb tensions, and subtle shifts indicated active planning. A technician called out, "Should we adjust the simulation parameters?" "No," replied Professor Vextar. "This is excellent. Students, observe the predator's complete demeanor shift on target identification. Notice controlled breathing and focused positioning." Lisa leaned towards Jake. "Does it look like it's trying to escape?" Jake nodded, realizing something else was occurring beyond the hunting demonstration. The Shadow Stalker began moving differently, systematically exploring the containment field boundaries. Its claws tested the energy barriers, searching for vulnerabilities. "I think there's a problem with the containment field," Jake stated. Professor Vextar looked up. "What do you mean?" Jake clarified. The creature was testing the containment barriers, not simply hunting the projections. A few students turned to him with perplexed or annoyed expressions. Krath snickered derisively. "The human thinks he understands predator behavior better than a shadow stalker," Kraft stated aloud. "Perhaps you should stick to subjects more suited for your primitive grasp." Professor Vextar raised one tentacle-like appendage. "Mr. Martinez raises an intriguing point. Let us observe more closely." Even as the professor lectured, Jake noticed the containment fields flickering more frequently. The energy barriers holding the Shadow Stalker were clearly malfunctioning, and the creature had taken note. The Shadow Stalker retreated to a corner of its enclosure, pressing both clawed hands against the barrier. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the entire barrier flickered violently, and a sound like an electrical discharge filled the lecture hall. "System alert," a technician announced, his voice tight with concern. "Fluctuations in the containment grid." "How serious?" Professor Vextar asked, approaching the technician's monitoring station. "Unknown at this time. Backup systems are compensating, but we should consider ending the demonstration early." Jake observed that the Shadow Stalker clearly sensed the weakness in its prison, displaying an intelligence surpassing expectations. Not only had it detected the technical issues, but it was methodically probing different areas to locate the weakest points. "Professor, we should evacuate the classroom," Jake said, rising from his seat. "The creature knows the containment field is failing." This remark prompted a stronger reaction from his fellow students. Several turned to stare at him, a few protesting audibly. "The human is panicking," one of Kraft's companions, a heavily armored being, retorted. "Typical prey species behavior in the presence of a predator." "I'm not panicking," Jake replied, trying to maintain composure. "I'm observing behavior that indicates immediate danger." But even then, the Shadow Stalker had discovered a weak point. It pressed against a specific section, holding its pressure for several crucial seconds. The energy barrier flickered violently, and alarms blared from the technician's equipment. Critical system failure, the lead technician declared, his voice filled with alarm. Containment breach in progress. All students evacuate immediately. Chaos erupted in the lecture hall. Students surged toward the exits, some with the practiced efficiency of species accustomed to danger, others panicked and stumbling. The organized classroom environment dissolved into a frenzied scramble as beings of various sizes and shapes navigated the tiered seating, rushing for safety. Jake looked back at the containment field. The Shadow Stalker was no longer testing the barriers. It was actively dismantling them. Its claws scraped against the energy field, sending cascades of sparks into the air. "Lisa!" Jake called out, searching for her amidst the evacuating students. He spotted her near the front of the lecture hall, moving toward the main exit with a group. Professor Vextar worked frantically with the technicians, attempting to reinforce the failing system. "Backup power to the primary grid. Activate auxiliary systems," he ordered. "Sir, the creature is employing a bioelectric discharge," a technician reported. "It's actively disrupting the containment field through direct electrical interference." Jake felt a chill, realizing the Shadow Stalker possessed not only strength and intelligence, but also unanticipated biological capabilities. This was far worse than mere equipment failure. The containment field flickered, held for a moment, then collapsed entirely. The Shadow Stalker stood still for 2 seconds, as if surprised by its sudden freedom. Then its hunting instincts engaged. The creature's form seemed to expand as it straightened, its camouflage activating, making it difficult to track even in the well-lit hall. Its head turned slowly, scanning the room, evaluating its numerous prey. Students, who had been evacuating orderly moments before, now broke into panicked flight. Screams echoed through the hall, mixed with the sounds of pushing and shoving. Larger species trampled smaller ones in their desperate escape. Jake, however, felt a strange sense of clarity. Amid the chaos, his mind focused, allowing him to discern the Shadow Stalker's hunting pattern. He predicted its movement based on body positioning and head direction. The creature wasn't randomly attacking, but selecting targets based on vulnerability and isolation. It was heading directly toward Lisa, separated from the main group and trapped near the front of the hall. Knowing no security forces could arrive in time, Jake realized the survival of Lisa depended on those present. The Shadow Stalker stalked toward Lisa with deadly grace. Camouflage flickered in and out of visibility. Steps were silent, despite its size, and yellow eyes fixated on her with relentless focus. The evacuation had transformed into a stampede. Professor Vextar and the technicians fought to activate backup containment, but their equipment sparked and smoked from the Shadow Stalker's bioelectric assaults. Jake observed with a detachment, time slowing as his mind processed the situation. The Shadow Stalker was 30 feet from Lisa. It was deliberately and patiently closing the distance, aware of the trap. Jake noticed that most others either fled or were paralyzed by terror. Even the formidable Krath and his companions had given up their semblance of courage. But Jake moved in the opposite direction. His action was uncalculated, instinctive, an impulse driven by millions of years of human evolution. Not fear, but a different response. He moved slowly, deliberately toward the Shadow Stalker, eye contact unwavering. He emitted low, guttural sounds, not words but a clear challenge. The Shadow Stalker, noticing Jake's approach, immediately stopped advancing on Lisa. The creature, processing this unprecedented action, paused. Prey simply did not approach predators. Jake continued to walk forward, holding eye contact, silently asserting himself. He grabbed a piece of fallen equipment, hefting it to demonstrate readiness. The Shadow Stalker recoiled. The movement was minimal, but Jake understood its significance. The creature was reconsidering the situation. Prey was supposed to retreat, not approach. Another step forward, a more assertive sound. Echoing through the chaos, it stopped several students in their tracks. "What is he doing?" someone whispered in disbelief. "The human has lost his mind," another muttered. But Professor Vextar looked up, seeing something else. "Fascinating," he murmured. "The human is exhibiting apex predator behavior." Jake pressed forward, the shadow stalker retreating. The creature's predatory instincts were overwhelmed by an unprecedented encounter. Potential prey, exhibiting predatory behavior. Its alien mind struggled to classify this new threat. Jake sensed the creature's confusion, and a primal awareness sparked within him. He raised his arms, enlarging his presence, and bellowed a sound of raw aggression, a blend of roar and scream that filled the lecture hall. Students, pausing their escape, craned their necks. The remaining beings fell silent, shocked by the ferocity in Jake's voice. The shadow stalker recoiled, its claws scratching the floor. For the first time since its containment breach, uncertainty flickered in its eyes. Jake exploited the advantage. He moved in a deliberate circle around the shadow stalker, maintaining eye contact, shielding Lisa. His movements, though controlled, were aggressive, a boxer circling an opponent. "Stay behind me," he instructed Lisa, without turning. "Move to the exit slowly, but don't run." Lisa cautiously inched along the wall. Jake adjusted his position, ensuring she remained protected. The stalker's gaze followed Lisa, but Jake's assertive sounds and movements redirected its attention. The predator was forced to view Jake as the primary threat, despite its instincts urging it to seize the easily accessible human. "Impossible," Krath's voice echoed from near the exit. "Humans are prey. They lack the weapons and strength to pose a threat to a shadow stalker." But Jake relied not on brute force, but on a more potent weapon: psychology. He projected unshakable confidence, sending a clear message. Attacking Lisa meant confronting him first, an encounter that would prove far too costly. The shadow stalker showed signs of agitation. It was adapted to hunt predictable prey, creatures that either fought fiercely or fled in terror. Jake's behavior was completely atypical. He neither attacked nor retreated, but claimed territory with controlled aggression, the hallmark of an apex predator. The creature continued its retreat. Its camouflage, a sign of stress or confusion, flickered more rapidly. The perfect hunter was being outmaneuvered by something incomprehensible. A sense of awe replaced the panic in the lecture hall, a dawning realization that they witnessed something remarkable. The human was forcing a shadow stalker to retreat with sheer willpower. An unnerving silence descended, broken only by Jake's controlled breathing and the occasional scrape of the shadow stalker's claws. The massive predator continued its retreat, its alien features revealing growing uncertainty. Jake maintained his aggressive stance, the metal fragment held high and his eyes locked on the creature. Every movement deliberate and menacing, emphasizing his non-prey status, a defending predator. Lisa, now safe near the seating area, watched the unfolding drama with wide eyes. Students huddled against walls, transfixed by the impossible encounter. The shadow stalker halted its retreat, crouched, and muscles tensed. Jake recognized the posture, a decision point. Would the shadow stalker back down, abandoning primal instinct, or risk an attack? Jake's psychological tactics held only so much against 8 feet of muscle, claws, and teeth, but he grasped something the shadow stalker struggled to comprehend. He wasn't bluffing. He moved forward, closing the gap to less than 15 feet. At this distance, a single leap would bring the shadow stalker within lethal range. Yet, Jake displayed no fear. He growled, shifted his weight forward, a posture of imminent assault. The creature's head tilted, its large alien mind unable to reconcile Jake's small size with his fearlessness. Every other encounter with a shadow stalker culminated in flight, terror, or submission. "Security to Lecture Hall 7, Professor Vextar," Urgent words crackled through a communication device. "We need containment assistance immediately. The situation is unprecedented." Jake heard the professor, but kept his focus. Security was minutes away. This clash would resolve before arrival. He tried to convince the Shadow Stalker that an attack would be too costly. The Shadow Stalker moved, not forward or back, but in a circling motion to Jake's left, testing whether he'd maintain his position. Jake adjusted his stance, preventing Lisa from harm and matching the creature's movement. "It's working," a voice whispered. "The human is controlling where the predator moves." Jake sensed growing frustration in the Shadow Stalker. Ambush hunters, designed to strike from concealment, were unprepared for this prolonged confrontation. The Shadow Stalker attempted a maneuver to Jake's right, testing his defense. Jake met this maneuver. The message was clear: no easy path to Lisa. Krath's voice echoed: "Impossible. Humans are herbivores from a low-gravity world. They don't have predator instincts." But Jake was proving this wrong. Deep hunting instincts, legacies of ancestors facing cave bears and saber-toothed cats, driven by determination and persistence, fueled his actions. The Shadow Stalker, sensing these ancient legacies, became more agitated, its camouflage fluctuating intensely. The ideal predator confronted a new type of prey. Prey evolved into predators. Jake escalated the conflict. 2 strides closer, weapon raised, a more aggressive vocalization than before, a primal, violent sound surprising even him. The Shadow Stalker recoiled, claws scraping. A brief, unsettling glimpse into the creature's monstrous form followed. The sight didn't faze Jake, only fueled his aggression. "Look at its posture." Professor Vextar's voice was low, composed. "The Shadow Stalker is displaying submission behaviors. It's becoming intimidated." Professor Vextar was correct. The creature's head lowered, its posture shifting from hunting aggressiveness to defensive withdrawal. It no longer viewed Jake as prey, but as a territorial threat. Jake pressed the advantage, taking another step forward while maintaining his assertive posture. The metal fragment, though inadequate, held psychological weight, displaying unwavering intent. The Shadow Stalker retreated once more, its alien eyes darting through potential exits. The easy target now faced protection from something that registered as a competing predator. A cost-benefit analysis became unfavorable. It was searching an exit. Lisa remained near the seating area. Jake nodded slightly, unseen by the creature, his focus fixed. He realized this behavior. The Shadow Stalker no longer hunts. It seeks disengagement. But Jake couldn't let the creature escape. Many were present. Jake needed to keep the predator focused on him while facilitating its capture. The standoff continued, predator confronting predator, in a test of wills that defied the galactic scientific community's understanding of human potential. Jake stood firm, projecting quiet confidence, while meticulously planning his next move. The Shadow Stalker crouched lower, its muscles tightening in preparation for a final, desperate attack. He prepared for the possibility that his psychological warfare wouldn't suffice, that he'd have to face the creature's physical power with only basic tools and human resolve. The moment hung heavy with tension and the looming threat of violence. 2 apex predators from different worlds, shaped by millions of years of evolution, locked in a confrontation that would determine not only survival, but also humanity's standing among the stars. The Shadow Stalker held its crouch, muscles coiled, seemingly forever. Jake remained motionless, his gaze locked on the creature, radiating the unyielding confidence of a territory holder. The lecture hall's silence was absolute, allowing the subtle sounds of the alien's breath and the faint hum of damaged equipment to be heard. Then, slowly, the Shadow Stalker began to straighten from its attack crouch. The movement was subtle, a slight relaxation of its rear quarters, but Jake recognized it instantly as a disengagement signal. The alien predator was choosing avoidance over risking a fight with an opponent whose capabilities it couldn't fully assess. The creature retreated, One careful step followed by another. Its eyes remained on Jake, but predatory intensity had diminished. The Shadow Stalker no longer viewed him as prey, but as a territorial rival to be avoided, not challenged. Jake maintained his assertive posture while allowing the creature space. He instinctively understood that pressing the Shadow Stalker too hard might trigger a defensive attack, while retreating too quickly would reignite its hunting instincts. The key was projecting consistent threat while allowing the creature to withdraw with apparent dignity. "Remarkable," Professor Vexar whispered to his technicians. "The human understands dominance dynamics better than most trained xenobiologists." Heavy footsteps echoed from the main corridor, and the distinctive whine of charging energy weapons filled the air. Academy security forces arrived, equipped to contain the escaped apex predator. The Shadow Stalker's head turned towards the approaching sounds. Its alien features hinted at what could only be described as relief. The creature realized its predicament was becoming increasingly unsafe. Confronted by an unexpected, formidable rival and threatened by reinforcements. "Security teams, hold your positions," Professor Vexar commanded as armored figures appeared in the doorways. "The situation is under control." Control was perhaps a strong word, but Jake had contained the crisis. The Shadow Stalker was no longer focused on the vulnerable students, but on escaping. Jake slowly moved right, clearing a path to one of the exits. Maintaining a threatening stance, he offered an escape route, while making it clear that any attack on the others would result in immediate confrontation. The Shadow Stalker understood the offer immediately. With movements fluid yet no longer predatory, it began to edge toward the exit Jake had indicated. Its camouflage flickered erratically, a sign of stress and uncertainty rather than hunting behavior. "Containment field ready," announced the lead security officer, an armored being of an unidentifiable species. "We can establish a capture perimeter around the creature." "Wait," Jake called out, his voice steady despite the adrenaline. "Let it move toward exit 3. I can guide it into containment without forcing a confrontation." The security officer consulted Professor Vexar, who nodded slowly in agreement. "Follow the human's guidance," instructed Professor Vexar. "Mr. Martinez appears to understand the creature's psychology better than our standard protocols anticipate." Jake continued his delicate dance with the Shadow Stalker, maintaining just enough pressure to guide the creature toward the designated exit, while avoiding actions that could set off its defensive instincts. It was like guiding a massive, dangerous sheepdog, requiring patience, confidence, and precise timing. The creature reached the exit and paused, its eyes studying the security forces waiting beyond. Jake momentarily feared a final struggle, but the Shadow Stalker finally yielded, its movements suggesting resignation rather than defeat. Security teams surrounded it with containment fields. The capture was accomplished without violence, injury, or the usual destruction associated with Shadow Stalker incidents. The lecture hall erupted in voices. Students, having fallen silent, now expressed excitement. Professors scribbled notes, and technicians tended to damaged equipment. Jake, his makeshift weapon still in hand, stood in the center of the hall, the full impact of the event beginning to resonate. His heart pounded, his hands trembled slightly, and he felt a mix of exhaustion and alertness. "Jake!" Lisa rushed towards him, her face awash with gratitude and astonishment. "What did you do? How did you know to do that?" Jake lowered his gaze at the metal fragment in his hand, letting it fall. "I don't know," he admitted. "It just felt like the right thing to do." As he approached cautiously, his blue features conveying profound respect. "My friend, what you accomplished defies everything we know about interspecies psychology." Around the hall, other students gazed at Jake with wonder, awe, or perhaps fear. They had witnessed something challenging their understanding of human capabilities and limitations. Krath stood at the edge of the group, his reptilian features betraying an unseen emotion. "Human," Krath stated formally. "I owe you an apology. I believed your species lacked the instincts of true predators. I was clearly wrong." Professor Vexar approached, his tentacle-like appendages exhibiting intense intellectual excitement. "Mr. Martinez," the professor said, "what you demonstrated raises profound questions about human evolutionary history. Would you be willing to participate in follow-up studies? I believe the galactic scientific community needs to significantly revise its understanding of your species." Jake looked at the faces around him, alien expressions of curiosity, respect, and even weariness. He understood that his actions had changed more than the immediate crisis. He had altered how these beings perceived humanity itself. "I'll help with any studies you feel are necessary," Jake replied. "But I hope people understand that I'm not some kind of superhuman. I just did what felt natural when someone was in danger." Professor Vexar's compound eyes studied him intently. "Mr. Martinez, I suspect that what feels natural to humans may be far more extraordinary than your species realizes." As the excitement subsided and students dispersed, Jake wondered about the long-term consequences. He had come to the academy to learn about galactic civilization, but instead, he had taught them something unexpected about humanity. Would this lesson prove a blessing or a burden for Earth's future among the stars? 3 days after the Shadowstalker incident, Jake sat in Professor Vexar's private office, surrounded by monitoring equipment and recording devices. Vexar had spent the morning conducting various tests and interviews to understand the factors behind Jake's unprecedented predator confrontation. "Your stress hormone levels during the incident were remarkably low," explained Professor Vexar, reviewing data on holographic displays. "Most beings facing a Shadowstalker experience extreme fear responses. Yours actually decreased as the confrontation intensified." Jake shifted uncomfortably. "I wasn't really thinking about being afraid. I was focused on protecting Lisa and figuring out how to handle the creature." "Exactly," the professor said, his appendages moving excitedly. "Your brain shifted into a specialized predator response mode. Instead of triggering fear reactions, the presence of danger activated hunting and territorial behaviors." The office door chimed, and Z entered, carrying a datapad and radiating barely contained excitement. "Professor, you need to see the latest reports from Earth," Z announced.